A mess kit is typically a nested pot, pan, and cup designed for individual use outdoors. They're often compact and lightweight, but some are junk and some are more than you need. Often depicted with a pot on his head, Johhny Appleseed is never seen actually using it for cooking. Stick around and I'll share my thoughts on mess kits, chow kits, and just who Johhny Appleseed actually was in this week's Camping Gear with the Yankee Camper Mess Kits.
When I was in Scouts, we were on an overnight camp out. My dad had come as a parent leader. One of the tasks we had to do was cook our own dinner using a mess kit. I had one of the basic aluminum. I don't remember what I cooked, but I scorched the pan terribly. When I showed my dad the pan, he told me to use some sand and a damp paper towel to loosen the burnt mess. Sure enough, that worked. That was the only time I recall using that set as a scout or ever to cook. But I never forgot the experience or the lesson. Cooking in the field takes some skill and practice. It also requires the proper equipment. I'm going to share my personal mess kits, including my favorites. But first, what is a mess kit? There are several videos out about the history of mess kits, but basically it's a set of nested foodware that's intended primarily for personal eating. I suppose my plastic lunch set could be considered a basic mess kit if I added something to drink on. But most sets are also designed to cook the food as well as consume it. Therefore, mess kits typically include a pot with a lid, a pan, a cup, and a plate. The first mess kit I want to share is a Boy Scout set that I purchased at a yard sale. It's stamped with the official BSA logo and, as a bonus, includes a Scout Chow Kit as well. I'll talk about the Chow Kit in a bit, so we'll just set that aside. This is made from aluminum and is very similar to the one I used when I burned my dinner back in the 70s. It's held together with a thumb screw, and it includes a frying pan with a handle. The handle is what holds the set closed and in place with a screw with the wing nut. It also has a pot with a lid, a cup, which has graduated measurements in it, and a pan. Additionally, it's all held together in a cloth carrying bag that has the BSA logo. My other go-to set is possibly manufactured by Techsport, but it isn't marked. This one has a plate, a cup, a small pot that holds 2.5 cups of liquid, which is admittedly a little bit small, but it works, and the frying pan. The bottom of the frying pan is copper clad, which is designed to help distribute the heat a little more evenly. But the handle sticks up at an odd angle, which makes it somewhat awkward to use. The Lord is good to me, and so I thank the Lord for giving me the things I need. Sun and the rain and the apple seed, the Lord is good to me. I first learned that song in Boy Scouts as a way to say grace before eating. Johhny Appleseed is a man from folklore who is often depicted as wearing a pot for a hat. That's the ultimate in personal cookware. I'm here among the apple trees at the Johhny Appleseed rest stop on Route 2 in Lancaster, Massachusetts. The American folk hero was a real person and was born while the country was still a British colony in 1774, just west of here in Leominster. His real name was John Chapman, and he really did travel west planting apple orchards. He was just a toddler when his mother passed away, so his father remarried and moved John along with his siblings, possibly 9 or more, to Longmeadow, Massachusetts, near Springfield. The family were devout Christians, and this influenced young Chapman for the remainder of his life. While known to be a bit eccentric, it's debatable whether or not he actually wore a tin pot as a chapeau. There's no doubt, however, that he carried with him a means to cook food such as soup or mush over an open flame. Around the turn of the 19th century, Chapman, now in his 20s, had moved to Franklin, Pennsylvania, named for the famous patriot from that state, on what was then the western frontier. During this time period, hard cider was the popular drink of many citizens, including children of the new country, especially New Englanders, who preferred it over beer. Cider kills the bacteria that can commonly be found in water. John gathered seeds from local cider mills and began growing apple tree seedlings, eventually creating an orchard. Land speculators were buying up land in the Ohio Valley and as far as what is now western Wisconsin, in an area known as the Northwest Territory. From an article that appeared in Smithsonian Magazine in November of 2014, author Natasha Geeling writes, starting in 1792, the Ohio Company of Associates made a deal with potential settlers. Anyone willing to form a permanent homestead on the wilderness beyond Ohio's first permanent settlement would be granted 100 acres of land. To prove their homesteads to be permanent, settlers were required to plant 50 apple trees and 20 peach trees in 3 years, since an average apple tree took roughly 10 years to bear fruit.
I hope you're enjoying this video, but I don't receive any compensation for this. One thing you can do is buy me a cup of coffee. Doesn't have to be very much. Just a couple of dollars would be great. I'll put a QR code and the link right over here. Now, let's get back to the video.
My favorite personal cookware by far is the Mirro Open Country set that I bought in the early 2000s. It's made from stainless steel and is actually intended for use by 2 people. The set's contained in a nylon travel bag and has 2 pots with lids. The larger holds 5.5 cups, and the smaller 3.5. It also has 2 plastic drinking cups and a frying pan. You'll see me using this set primarily when making videos for my Making a Mess series. If you're looking to purchase a set similar to this, I saw a tech sport version online. I think the additional cost is worth it for a 2-person set over a single, but the price is almost double. A mess kit doesn't need to be a store-bought set, although most sets can be purchased for under $20. Don't hesitate to explore secondhand stores or yard sales. Also, check with family and friends to assemble a set on the cheap. Here, I've assembled a small cook set using vintage enamelware. These were in the basement. This set is a double boiler, so 2 pots and a lid, along with a frying pan to match. I bought the frying pan off of eBay for short money. Keeping with the vintage theme, I added a Melmac cup for drinking. A double boiler, while certainly not necessary in camp cooking, will allow for making more gentle heating of some recipes. Be aware that some enamelware plates and cooking pots could have lead, which would leach into the food if used. I tested these pots, cover, and pan to be assured that no lead was present using a simple test swab kit available at most hardware stores. Eventually, I'll add a Melmac plate to this kit as well. I have to warn you about being too cheap, however. This is the aluminum set I bought when I first started with this idea back in the early 2000s. It worked okay for a short time, but I soon discovered that the pot, along with the plate, had developed small holes because, I assume, the aluminum was so thin. Note, no such problem has occurred on the Scout set, which is much older and of higher quality. I know that certain detergents and acidic foods, such as tomatoes, can cause these holes, but it made me switch to stainless steel. While I prefer the use of stainless steel, it is less heat conductive than aluminum, so food can take longer to cook. The downside, of course, of aluminum is that it can burn. Also, there can be a price to pay with steel in weight. Getting back to John Chapman, he recognized a business opportunity. Understanding what it took to grow apples from seed, he would travel into the wilderness, establishing orchards ahead of the settlers. This gave him a distinct advantage in that he had established seedlings for trees required by those wishing to homestead. The apples he grew weren't what we think of today as sweet, beautiful little orbs for snacking or cooking. They were far more tart, known as spitters, probably because if you took a bite, you'd want to spit it out. They were perfect for pressing into cider. He continued west and, being a devout vegetarian and herbal naturalist, could easily live off the wild plants that grew. Although odd in his dress, sometimes going barefoot even in the winter, and wearing second-hand clothes he traded for his young trees, or burlap he may have found cast off, he is said to have had a friendly way about him, and would usually share Bible stories with the children of the settlements he would visit in his travels. He usually stayed out of doors, sleeping on the ground with a small fire for comfort. John Chapman continued to travel around the areas of Indiana, Ohio, and western Pennsylvania. He was a welcome sight in many of the communities as he would bring news from distant locations and was known to be gentle and kind to the settlers, their children, and both domestic and wild animals. He would carry with him all his belongings, including his mush pot for making cornmeal mush, or what New Englanders call hasty pudding, a food he would have grown up on. It's possible that he placed this on his head to keep his hands free, but most likely he wore a hat that he had traded for his seedlings. I suppose it could have been an early felt top hat that had been discarded in favor of the new beaver hat. This would act as a liner for the pot itself and could be inspiration for the folklore. Chapman's most prized possession, aside from his Bible, would have been his satchel of Appleseed. This earned him the nickname the Appleseed Man, but later he was simply known as Johhny Appleseed. Johhny Appleseed spent almost 50 years planting and cultivating apple trees. It's estimated that he may have planted over 6 million apple seeds. While not all of them matured, that's still a remarkable number of trees. Apple trees can last up to 100 years, but are fully mature at 25. This meant that people who bought trees or orchards became repeat customers, allowing Chapman to not be poor, but he still preferred living outdoors. In March 1845, outside Fort Wayne, Indiana, he learned that the fencing protecting one of his orchards from cattle and other animals had collapsed. Despite the snowstorm, he set off to repair the broken barrier. Along the way, he stopped at a friend's house, Nathaniel Worth. In the morning, John awoke with pneumonia, despite never having been sick before in his life. Worth worked to nurse him back to health, but on March 18th, at the age of 71, the New England native who had changed the world of apples, succumbed to his illness. His actual grave is unknown, but there's a marker in Fort Wayne noting his passing. The story of Johhny Appleseed started shortly after his death, and by 1871, Harper's New Monthly magazine shared the story with the nation. It's thought that any trees Chapman planted that may have still been living by the 1920s were cut down by the FBI to stem the production of hard cider during Prohibition. In 1948, however, Disney released a cartoon that cemented the folklore into legend. Despite getting many of the details wrong, it did introduce Johhny Appleseed once again to a nation seeking folk heroes after World War II.
Now you know.
Of course, cooking the food is one thing, but eating it requires utensils. These sets are often referred to as Chow Kits. They're typically made up of a fork, a spoon, and a knife. I remember having a pocket knife with a fork and a spoon attached when I was younger, but I don't recall ever actually eating anything. The Scout Mess Kit came with the Chow Kit that I had mentioned earlier. It only had the fork and the knife. I found a spoon that had been relegated to a junk drawer and ground down the handle to fit into the case. This looks very similar to the one that came with the set, but I'm looking for an original as I wander around yard trails. I have a nested set that I've used that slides together with the knife as the base and the fork and the spoon that slides into it. But by far, the most popular is the set with the posts on the spoon and the knife and the fork slide into it. I also have a plastic set that came with my lunch kit, which combines the spoon and the knife, and the fork is separate. I hope that you've enjoyed my take on what makes a mess kit and learned a bit about an American folk hero. Please watch my other videos entitled Making a Mess, where I'll put some of the cookware seen here to use in making single-serve meals outdoors using shelf-stable ingredients from the grocery store with no refrigeration.
If you found this video interesting and informational, please take a moment to give it a thumbs up. It just lets YouTube know that you enjoy the content that I'm putting out. Consider subscribing to be informed about videos that I put out every week on the places that I camp, the camping gear that I use, and my Making a Mess series. I'd love to hear from you, so be sure to send me something in the comments section. I try to answer every single one. In the meantime, I hope you'll get outside and
thank you for watching.